Hi, Dr. Reagan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. The demand for these workshops is so high that our March 2023 workshop is completely sold out. But there are still seats available for the only remaining workshop in September 2023. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now. You know what the whole purpose of that 4-week vacation is? If I'm willing to bet you this is what Mike means, especially after reading it. The whole point is to get the business running without you. That is Correct. The whole point. So the Clockwork system is about implementing systems that allow your practice to run. So you are not being run by your business. Correct. And that gets right back to the top of our conversation about entrepreneurial poverty. If you are in reaction mode, if the business cannot run without you, you are not running a business, you are running yourself.
Welcome to the Everyday Practices Podcast. I'm Reagan Robertson, and my co-host, Dr. Chad Johnson, and I are on a mission to share the stories of everyday dentists who generate extraordinary results using practical, proven methods you can take right into your own dental practice. If you're ready to elevate patient care and produce results that are anything but ordinary, buckle up and listen in.
Ladies and gentlemen, dentists and dentist wannabes, welcome to Everyday Practices Dental Podcast with your best host, Reagan Robertson, and your second best host, Chad Johnson, who also happens to be a dentist, but not a president of Productive Dentist Academy. Reagan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Chadwick. How are you today?
Great. So we had a fantastic high yesterday, which I must admit, the rest of the day, I was exhausted because I think I was so jazzed and stuff like that.
Did you build up so much adrenaline? You had an adrenaline crash.
Yeah, I did. I had a crash because, and then I had to go to basketball practice for my daughter. And I was like, I am exhausted. I just want to go to bed or eat ice cream or both. I don't know. So,
well, I think there was a lot of anticipation for it. And I think you and I were both surprised. You were so brave in reaching out and securing that interview for us. So yes. I was really excited that Mike said yes, because we know the value that he brings and we know what it means to the listeners. So I'm not at all surprised that you crashed. Did you say you had ice cream?
No, but I wanted ice cream. And then I was like, but I want to go to bed. So after the practice. So how's your day going so far? Bright and sunny on the Pacific Northwest coast.
Well, I'm excited to dive in and do our take on what happened from the actual, interview and share our nuggets. Other than pulling out my back, couldn't be happier. I'm in the best spot right now. So Good. I'm happy to be interviewing with you.
Well, we don't want to have it belabor too long, other than our silly intro. But here's the question that I have. My youngest daughter is always abbreviating words. She says that's sus. And they have fun with it. They know that it's not exactly proper lexicon, but they use it. So entrepreneur.
Proper lexicon, Dad.
Right.
Really? Okay.
Well, sorry, but entrepreneur.
That's not very bussin' of you.
I don't even know that one. But let's talk about entrepreneur.
Entrepreneurial point of view.
No, poverty.
Oh,
entrepreneur. I'm calling it entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur. Yes, entrepreneurial poverty is a very real thing. And I could tie that with, you can remain in startup phase for far longer than you realize. And I think a symptom of that as a business owner is entrepreneurial poverty, how do you define entrepreneurial poverty?
I would have been there. So when I started going to the workshops for Productive Dentist Academy, I was 9 years into practice and I was doing okay. I think a lot of dentists are at the point where I was doing okay enough and fine. And I mean, you're getting a paycheck, but you're also making the perceived necessary sacrifices, the delayed gratification, I think, is a lot of times how we describe it, for the reward that should come. I just wonder if people ever don't get that reward in the end, except the journey. The journey is nice, and you could say that made it all worth it, like Robert Frost or whatever, but the entrepreneurial poverty lies in the martyrdom that dentists and the like inflict upon themselves, to forego their reward as though they aren't the shareholder, versus if Elon Musk came in and whooped up on the business within a few months and said, no, we're going to start making this profitable. We're going to start, I'm going to fire all the unnecessary riffraff. We're going to cut expenses by doing this, and we're going to make the product even better to make shareholderness even more attractive, and we'll give dividends. I mean, stuff like that, where it's just really rocking. How about you? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think that you just unlocked a little bit of magic for me in there. So I think of entrepreneurial poverty as being, poverty being low on resources. And I think Mike took that into another dimension. So money is one factor, time is another factor. So it's not just about financial poverty, but I think that there's time. And as you age, you do. So if you're constantly sacrificing yourself in the present with the hopes that Valhalla, if you will, wherever that is on the other side of it. What you did unlock for me is you've got to be enjoying that journey, which we've all heard before. It's not about the end, it's the journey along the way. What are you comfortable with in that journey? And when do you check in with yourself and tell yourself, okay, this isn't working, or this is worth the sacrifice?
Yep.
So if you are continuously, it's like a hamster wheel. I think of entrepreneurial poverty as being on a hamster wheel. You're not moving yourself out to that next level. And I think you can even be in entrepreneurial poverty if you're doing well, but you're not doing great, kind of like the good to great. I think you can easily be in that, because comfort is one of the worst places to be, because it's just okay. You can get complacent in that. So I think for me, I was very moved by Mike sharing the traumatic event that sent him on this particular mission. Yeah. And he did say in there, he believes that when people suffer a trauma like he did, he lost everything, and his little 9-year-old daughter brought her piggy bank out because they were financially strapped, and said, I want to help with this. And as a father, how that made him feel. He felt it so deeply. He never wanted anybody else to go through that again. And I can intimately relate to that, because of my own story of being laid off one time. And it was the company that was so amazing that's what hurt. It wasn't the laying off, but it was the fact that the company and the people in the company were so amazing. I never wanted to have that happen again. And that actually changed my career trajectory.
Which is why recently Amazon's employee issue, like that's made you Google. That's why Google's employee layoffs had such an impact on you to kind of write your own Facebook op-ed, if you will.
Google was a Stroop effect. Do you know what a Stroop effect is?
No.
So a Stroop effect is when
like a Stroop waffle. Those are good.
Yeah. So take what color is your, no, not like a Stroop waffle. What color is your pen? Do you have a pen or a pencil handy?
I do. Right here. It's white.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So the outside of the pen is, when you write, what color is that pen?
It actually is black.
It's black. So write the word red.
Okay.
But it's in a black color.
Yes.
So for colors, a Stroop effect is what happens when there's a really fun little trick you can do that I've put up on screen before. And it says like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and they're all in their colors. And then we switch the colors, but we keep the words the same and people can't read it. So it was a dissonance in my brain. It really gave me this effect. Google says they do no evil, and they say that they are, well, no, they don't say, they demonstrate by how they treat their employees, how much they care. So we've all heard it. They get the massages. They only have to work 6-hour days. They are really well compensated.
I've been to their campus.
Me too.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. So assumptions can get me. And I just assumed they would communicate layoffs with the same grace and dignity that they treat their employees on, from what I know as an outsider, a day-to-day perspective. So that's why, it was very shocking to me. And yes, it did. And you're right. When we forget about the human and we only look at the numbers, that bothers me greatly. And I think that we're not taking into account the emotional state of the people. So, and I'm no saint. I've made lots of leadership mistakes. So, but I do think that's to me, it takes Mike Michalowicz's work from being good business guides to great business guides, because he has personally experienced what it feels like to suffer deeply as an entrepreneur. And he has come out of it. And he is, I mean, can you already feel like you're on the mission? Like he's turning around and he's going back with his hand out and being like, I've done this. I failed. This is how I got myself out. Come with me.
Yes. Yep.
It's inspirational.
QBR, Queen Bee role.
Yeah, the Queen Bee role, I felt like he did go into some detail. And I felt like, Chad, your slay disease was more of like the big promise. And I don't remember if he said that or not, but I felt like that's your big promise.
Yes, because so in EOS, we call it our core focus niche. We slay disease. We have one that's called your purpose, cause, passion within the core focus.
Yes.
So ours is empowering our patients to optimal oral health. But then they said, take that and boil it down to 3 or 1 or 2 words.
Good.
And so I was like, we slay disease. And so
it's catchy and it's memorable, which are 2 really big hallmarks. I feel like Mike Michalowicz is, if you put together Gino Wickman from Traction,
right,
Donald Miller from Business Made Simple,
yes,
and Dave Ramsey,
yes,
stir it up in a pot and spit it out, you're gonna get the best of all 3.
The synthesis. Yes.
I can't speak fully to Dave Ramsey, but the Profit First has it what feels
being
like
mindful of the accounting stuff. Yes, no, you're right. But yeah, he did, going back to what you're saying, he did call it the big purpose,
big promise.
Big promise. Yeah. So core focus, or in EOS, they call it the niche, but I hate that. And I call it the niche, like the word should be pronounced. And so yeah, the big promise. But then I purely asked, I was like, this doesn't make sense, I think, to a lot of dentists, maybe myself included, because we're not looking to scale from 1 dentist to 10 dentists to 100 dentists. Right. And few people try that. But the fact is, a lot of dentistry is still done with 1 dentist. And I don't think that's a bad thing. So let's say that 1 dentist says, well, I'm the queen bee, maybe, but then what's the queen bee role, or our
what it is
collectively?
I would have changed it to be called the Queen Bee activity, because remember, he said like 3 or 4 times, the Queen Bee role isn't a person, it's an activity.
Correct.
So I think it really shouldn't be a role. I think that's tripping, at least it feels like it's tripping you up a bit.
Maybe.
And it's Queen Bee activity. So the big promise is we slay disease. What is the activity?
Right.
That points to, this reminds me a lot of Donald Miller's key characteristics, which I walk practices through, and critical actions. A key characteristic is similar to like a big promise. So you, Chad, you are compassionate. Everybody in the practice has to show up as compassionate. That's one of your core values. What actions do your team have to take in order to demonstrate compassion? And you've got it listed out. I think active listening is one of them. But anyway, my point being, so if it's a Queen Bee action, what action can every team member take that will slay disease?
Yeah.
Do you think that's it?
Well, so we somewhat codified that with our code of ethics to specify, like which things that were our characteristics and, whatever actions, activities that manifest that. But sometimes I even just go, well, when he says, what's the most important function? To collect money. I mean, to some degree, it's like, okay, so that should compete. Because if someone said, well, we're super compassionate, it's like, well, you're closing the door at the end of the quarter if you don't collect money. And
Here's the rub. They have to go together. Remember when I say data
Correct.
plus emotion equals
Absolutely.
action?
Yep.
You can't have one without the other. You can, but when it is slanted that way, for me, it's a core value violation of myself.
Yep.
So that's why I think I've always had a hard time trying to understand, for example, hedge funds. If somebody were to tell me a story about a hedge fund where I know that the why, like the betterment of humanity, is happening in some way. So Chad, you do that right now, then I would be on board. But I tend to look at it from heavily dominated on the data side, which is the financial, the money. And we
Sure.
both know that there's a lot of story that goes into what our finances tell us. So Chad, you've done this. Yes, collecting means that your doors get to stay open. It means that you get to have profit. You get to achieve that lifestyle that you deserve. But you have, to me, in my opinion, my humble opinion, you have married it with a why, with slay disease. There's a compassionate reason for me to want to collect that money. There's a reason that betters humanity. And I find that to be very exciting.
You hear historically a lot of dentists jokingly say, making tooth dust, right? Because the idea is if we're drilling and we're, dustifying teeth and in essence, slaying disease.
Teeth.
I just made that up. That, right. That if we're doing that could in one sense be our, core focus or whatever. And so, that but at the same time, dentistry's kind of evolved from that to be like, wait a second, if I didn't really want to go into nerd factor with them, but historically there have been like three main things that dentistry does. We prevent, diagnose, and treat disease.
Yes.
It's a three triangle thing. I mean, I think when I was going into dentistry, there were three triangles that the ADA or the who knows what, sanctioned body said, dentistry is there to prevent, diagnose, and treat.
So that's your queen bee activity.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. But then it's also almost so intangible because it's just like, okay, it's fine enough to define, but like making tooth dust, that's tangible, like, right. But it's like, does that, so every little nuance of how we word it is going to have a different.
Wait, so what is it? What are your three again?
For dentistry in general?
Yeah.
To diagnose. Prevent,
I thought it was prevent. Diagnose.
It doesn't,
then
there's no order to it really. I mean, because whether you're preventing or diagnosing, and then treating.
But if you don't have those three elements in a practice, there's what reason is there for a practice to exist?
Sure. And
if you don't do those three things, how can you possibly slay disease? You can't. So I think you're answering your question there.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I've got some real, okay. I think here's how we hack this. So, and this is going to fulfill that scratch that you have. I can feel it. And this is what I do like with PDA. So You've got critical action. So your queen bee action is to do those three things. That is everything drives to that purpose solely. Now let's go to your back office team. They aren't clinical. So what in the heck are they going to do? You give them a queen bee action role in their space. So like what we do with our team is critical actions are important, but sales and promotions critical actions are going to be very, very different for PDA than our business coaches or our team development coaches. Sure. They're going to have very different. Now, overarching, we will have a very important mission, just like your dental practice has to do those three things. But I think we could sub it down into teams. So your back office's team will be, their queen bee action will be a little different.
Yeah. In the hopes that we're all collectively slaying disease by getting people scheduled, by marketing to the people, all that stuff. Yeah.
I'm so on board with this. I would show up and be absolutely, and I would take pride in my job. So say collections is my job. I would suddenly feel very compelled to do so because when I collect, we are able to stay open. When I collect, everyone gets a paycheck. It works really well when I do my job, when I show up and I am contributing to keeping people healthy. I'm contributing to that diagnosis. I'm contributing to the treatment. I'm completely on board with this.
Yep. Which leads to our next discussion thing, the Big Bang.
Yeah. And oh my gosh. Yes.
With it being beautiful, noble. And I'm not sure as a business that we have one within Veranda, because I I I kind of leave it um to each person to, in essence, use their dollars that they take home to do their own amazing thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and some businesses have some of these philanthropic sounding goals, but to me, at the same time, it's not really. I mean, like, I don't know, it almost just seems contrived. And so, like, we don't have one, other than, I imagine, if we're slaying disease and we're, taking care of getting people to optimum oral health, that our patients one at a time can live their best life,
They can.
right. And that's also up to them to be defined however they would like.
When it comes to a big bang or a BHAG, the BHAG was the data-driven only. And so I love that he brought in beautiful and noble, so that he pulled emotion into it, which I thought was really, really beautiful. Beautiful. I'm wondering though, in times of life, I'm just asking this as reflective to you, because this is how I have been. Some people they have really, really big, audacious goals, and they just see so far out. And then sometimes they change it too, but they still always stay focused on that 5 to 10 year goal. There have been times in my life when I don't have that. I don't have a quote unquote BHAG. I do now again, but I went through, it was almost like, what do they call it? Like dark night of the soul, I guess. There's been a couple of times in my adult, probably just 2 in my adult years, where I just really didn't have that. And I think you're supposed to go through that too. So if you look at all your practices have been through and yourself over the past 3 years, couldn't there be a space for you to be like, maybe I don't need a big bang right now. Maybe I'm just gonna be in the present moment.
Yes.
And that's enough.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, there's 2 competing theories. Number one, the best basketball players the day after the NBA finals are over are hitting the weight room. So there's that type. But then there's also the type where after, for example, the British, sign off to America, fine, have your own country or whatever, that when we finally received word of that, the next day or so, they celebrated, and that they were instead of going, okay, we need to, prepare for the Civil War in 60 years. And then we need to, this and that. It's just like,
yes, you caught me on that yesterday after we interviewed Mike. And I remember I said to you, I was like, now who are we going to get next? And you were like, excuse me.
Yeah.
And I took that very reflective. I was like, I should just enjoy this moment. Like I really was. I was like, on to the next. Let's go get another one. Like, let's bring our listeners some really exciting. Yes.
Let's get Michael Jordan. I was like, I basically told her, I was just like, no, come on now. That's going to be number one, hard to beat. And let's just enjoy that. So that's why we had this conversation here. One tangible thing, and, I'm saving we kind of have an outline here. I'm saving one for the end, Reagan. So, I wanted to talk about, like when I asked him, it was really cool going to the bank, and hopefully listeners, you guys, that connected well with you, because for me, I was just being raw. It's just like, just stupid going to the bank was the toughest part. And honestly, Max Thaney knows this. He implemented it at the same time I read the book. And then he was 3 or 4 years ahead of me on implementing it. I read it. I have it back here on the blurred out stuff on my shelf. Then I even read the second book, the dentist, Profit First for Dentists. And I read through that. And then I was like, okay, we need to implement this. And I had my accountant, I basically said, all right, let's implement this. And he was like, cool, let's do this. And so he said, first thing, by the end of this week, I want you to go to the bank. And I was like, by the end of this week, this is a busy week. I was like, the next 3 weeks are busy. I've got basketball with the kids. I don't know. Then the banks, closed on, Friday afternoon. This isn't going to work. And I had all these dumb excuses. And I knew it. Like if someone said, aren't those dumb excuses? I'd be like, listen, that's cute and all that you're calling it dumb excuses. Yeah, I suppose. But I've got too many things going on. So he was just like, well, fine, set a date on the calendar. Sure enough, that date came up and I was like, oh, fine. I've got to freaking go to the bank. Fine. And sure enough, after I did that and I set up the accounts, which was work, it was work. I mean, that's why I was probably just, dragging my feet on it. But just like Nike, I mean, just do it. And I did it. And now I'm like, it's in motion. So that frictional coefficient that keeps you from moving, the static friction coefficient has been overcome. And you just pull on that napkin really quick, whip out the napkin from under the silverware and the plate and stuff by pulling fast, just get it done, pull the Band-Aid off. And now we're in motion. Now inertia is doing its thing, carrying us. So
I think there's two things going on in that moment. One, especially in our twin moments, I think you and I prioritize very quickly, and we can adapt and change to a situation. And something like setting up a bank account, to me, it's a below the line detail. It's like, and I hate to say it this way, but I'm like, could somebody else do that? Like
and
that would be my.
That was the problem. Is
I know.
It was one example of a thing where I had to go do it because I would have delegated that like a fiend.
Right. And you and I both would have. And so so there's the dragging of that feet. But Sean Spence, our SEO manager, we've worked together now for over a decade. Super. He's got one of those lives that I just, I aspire to, because he's very balanced. And I believe it comes from him knowing who he is and what he stands for and what he believes in. But the kicker to that is he said something one time and he said, I'm going to totally mess his quote up. The gist of it was, you will make whatever a priority is a priority. Like you will, otherwise it's just an excuse.
It's almost so obvious that it's like, it has to be true. Right?
Yes. And I'm sure that there's a statistic that shows what happens when you just wait and wait and wait for a really, long time. I've seen it. We have conversations with doctors who are lurkers of PDA for 7 years. And I wish that I could say that would be like the rarity, but, or the exception to the rule. We get a lot of doctors, and it's about a 6 to 7 year. Every single year. I've been following you for about 6 to 7 years. And finally, now I'm going to pull the trigger. Or we have a doctor come in and go to the workshop and then decide, well, we're just going to sit it out and wait. We're not going to go in and do coaching. And those ones break my heart, because they almost always come back 12, 24 months later, and they're either in the exact same position they were in, or they're worse off. And they're like, shoot, I guess now I'm really, really in need of this. Right. And I didn't implement what I learned at the workshop. So here we are again. So I think it's making that decision. In other words, I think something has to be just uncomfortable enough to make you and I like take that action if it's something that we're not naturally inclined to do. So something we can be totally mentally capable of, and yet we'll find every excuse in the book to either delegate it or just put it off.
Yep. Do you want to talk? It was interesting. I sent a private message to you when Mike brought up root trauma. And and I was like, oh, shoot, Regan's talked about that before. So give us your sermonette on that. Give us your spiel.
The third, listeners, if if there's been a paper on this or somebody's done their dissertation, I promise you, if not, I am going to go back to college and get my PhD so I can write on this. I truly believe that every human, especially if they're in their career, but every human is trying to solve for a past trauma they experienced. So they are trying to make sure either they're healing themselves or they are helping other people heal, or helping people avoid the trauma that they went through themselves. And you see it with a lot of activists. So I know that exists. What amazes me though, is I have done so many, what I call third level of why. That particular phrase comes from Skip Miller, and it's actually for a sales training course. But when I interview people, I've interviewed so many inside dentistry and outside dentistry. When I really get under to the true surface, that core of who they are, almost every single time they're healing something in themselves, and it shows up in work, which I think is really fascinating.
Now, I might be Okay, let me hash this out. So George Hegel was a 19th century German philosopher, ended up breeding philosophy like Marxism and stuff like that. And I'm making broad generalizations, but a lot of people followed his thoughts. And I believe it was him that said, you have a point and then a counterpoint and then a synthesis of it. And I almost think that was called the dialectic. I'm probably really wrong on someone is going to be like, you got that so wrong. Listen, I'm just, I think it was him, and I think it was the point, counterpoint, synthesis, and they had words for that. That's the wrong words. And it was German anyway, I'm sure. But what you're getting at too is you have a trauma and a response, and then somehow, oh, that blurred me out. Look at that. So you have a trauma, a response, and then the synthesis would be kind of like coming to grips with it.
Let me give you a tangible example. I'll give you a couple examples of interviews that I've done. So one interview was with a woman, and she does marketing and public speaking for a living. So I was helping her with her LinkedIn profile. So I was just giving her a little session, interviewing her to get her down to what really matters. And what bubbled to the surface, tears usually happen. Men and women will cry when you hit that note. So you all I do is I ask them about their ideal client and how it makes them feel. And so we get into this just kind of conversational tone. So there's a lot of emotions with it. But when we boil down to her end surface, she's a public speaker who does marketing for a living. So she enjoys giving other people a voice. She enjoys especially giving quiet people, which a lot of dentists, for example, are introverts and rather conflict averse, giving them a voice. And when it all boiled down, she did not feel she had a voice as a child. So she now wants to give voice to people who may feel like they are somehow inhibited by that.
Yeah.
Switch it over to a dentist that I interviewed. And so beautiful. It was really beautiful and easy to get down to her why. She was really in touch with her why. But really what it boiled down to is she wants to help people feel valued, seen, and get the attention they deserve, because she suffered quite a bit with her own dental problems and being seen with and take an immigrant take on it too. So being an immigrant in the United States and being unseen, unvalued, unheard, basically second-class citizen.
Yeah.
So her whole heart comes out, and it is to give that to somebody else through dentistry, I mean, really, right. So there's the clinical side of she's giving beautiful smiles, right? She's doing the implants and she does the veneers. She gives them aesthetically a great smile, functionally a great smile, but she's healing a much deeper thing. She's actually saying, I would like to go after minorities, specifically women, because did you know how undervalued they are and how unheard they are? That to me is authenticity. So that's why when Mike Michalowicz shows up and said, my daughter came to me with her piggy bank, I had to go home and tell my family, we've lost our house, we've lost everything, which just think about that, Chad. If you had to go tell Sarah, I'm sorry, I just lost it all, 100% of it all. I know you well enough, your optimism, you would die before anything would get you down that bad. You would still keep going, but I can't imagine that feeling. And so of course he's going to want to heal that. That's how it shows up for me.
Yeah.
And there's ones that surprised me too. There's ones that have been a little bit harder to get through. And then when I dig down and I realize maybe they shouldn't be in that career at all. They might actually be suffering. There's a family dynamic, living up to a dad or a mom and the expectations.
Or they're trapped in it. I mean, dentistry is a big investment. I mean, once you're in it, it's just well, I guess I'll pay the bills and just, I mean,
when maybe they really wanted to be a surgeon instead,
or an author, or I mean, something.
Yeah.
Who knows? All right. Yeah. So last topic that I saved the best for last, and the 4-week vacation. Let's hash that out.
Yes, King, the 4-week vacation. I thought that was really interesting. I feel like there was right before the pandemic, perhaps, didn't you take off a pretty good chunk of summer?
I did. In the summer, I was doing May, June, July, August, September, where we would work 3, take 2 off, work 3, take 2 off.
Right.
Now, that wasn't the whole team.
Mm-hmm.
I would take the time off, but I had associates. And so they'd keep working and stuff like that. So I'll admit, this is a tough pill for a lot of dentists to swallow, where I think if they read this book, they'd go QBR. Okay. Entrepreneurial. All right. Big Bang. Got it. Okay. And then you'd be like, wait a second, hold on. What about the chapter 11 or whatever, the 4-week vacation thing? It's like, oh, that's neat. I don't want chapter 11 in my life, so I'm going to skip over that.
You think dentists don't want a 4-week vacation? Dentists listening, do you want a 4-week vacation?
A 4-week in a row vacation, let's say 3 years into your career, you better be an associate. If you're an owner, I just don't see it happening when you've got bills to pay. So 4 weeks, fine. A couple weeks at a time, but 4 weeks off, man.
Could you bring in do they have traveling dentists?
Yes, but here's the question. If you're going to give your team a 4-week vacation, then he's talking about shutting the office down.
In the book, it sounded to me, if I read it correctly, it wasn't that. It would be giving one person in the team intermittent 4-week vacation, so that you wouldn't be shutting down the entire office for a month.
Fair enough.
But actually, if you did do that, where you just shut it down for the whole month, you could realistically goal set that out. I don't know how you would make that would be pretty hefty.
I think he was talking about stepping it to where, let's say you try 2 weeks, and then the following year you try 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks or something, and then just keep on stepping towards 4 weeks. You don't have to start from 0 to 4. And in my mind, I kind of want to get to that, because the last couple of years we've done right before Christmas, we'll take off, because we're a CIREC office too. So we don't have crowns coming back from the lab on the 31st that we're trying to cement for a PPO plan that has to be done on this year's insurance money. So number one, I'm fee for service now. Number two, we have a CIREC. And so if someone comes in on the 10th of December, they're leaving on the 10th of December with their crown. So we don't have this race at the end of the month to try and cement everything that, before the end of the year. It's just if you haven't started it before the 20th of December. So I take off the, right at the weekend ish before Christmas, and at least the 24th, but I take off, let's say, the weekend before whenever Christmas is, and then I take it off through the new year. And this last year we opened up on Monday, the 2nd of the new year. And it was a horrible day. No one's and everyone's like, well, it's kind of the celebrated New Year's Day. And in my driven mind, I'm like, that's so stupid. I'm like, we're here to work. You're over the new year. It's not even New Year's Day. It's the day after New Year's Day. And so I'm just it's Monday, get back to work, people, right? Total old school American mindset. I'm just come on. And yet we kind of just sat around and we decided, we were like, next year, let's take off, this first day. And I thought to myself, no, next year I might just take off the whole week. Because when I come into work, I want people ready to have their teeth worked on, which is tough enough, people don't, it's not an ice cream store ice cream shop where people are getting what they want. It's dentistry. It's it's okay.
Well,
I get that.
As a patient, I took off between Christmas and New Year. I took that week off, and I was really excited because I went and got my face lasered, and I did that. And I didn't know what to expect. So I was really excited that I could take the time off and do it during the holidays. So I thought that made it easy for me, but I like that you kind of, we're open to being flexible and changing it. Like PDA, for example, where if we can achieve our goals by, we can't, oh my gosh, my own team would just slap me right now. When we achieve our goal, we are going to give the entire company additional time off. And we're going to do it all together at the same time.
Yeah. And I think I've got this Noble. It would, again, going back to that word, like this noble idea of getting it done. Then the pragmatism just goes, yeah, like let's baby step this. And I like how in dentistry, well, there have been certain people that have, given the idea of like work 13 weeks, take a week off and stuff like that, or every quarter take off a couple weeks, or and that puts a little bit of flow, like seasonal flow to your work and stuff like that. I kind of like that. Man, I don't know, 4 weeks off, what I would do with 4 weeks is my other thing. Like now, if I was 60, bills paid, end of career, and practically, like getting closer to retirement anyway, I could probably find things to do with 4 weeks. But right now I just go, listen, I've got soccer practice. I've got, this
so your
stuff
regular life would just continue, and it would be like,
yeah,
you would end up
almost. And so I'm just like, I actually I'm one of the rare dentists that like, I'm like, I actually like drilling, like I don't mind working. And so it's like, I kind of want to get back to work, because it's like, it is what I like doing. So that's all.
Well, and I think that, go ahead.
How about this? I'm still mulling that over. Like I'm a work in progress for understanding in my life, balancing the pragmatism of no and the nobility of saying yes. I'll do this. And there's this. The most simple thing is I go, okay, you give people 4 weeks off. That's 1/12. That's 8%. So you need to, overproduce the rest of the year 8% more to be able to offset the 1 month that you have off.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's, I'm just looking at it from a math perspective, and it's just like, okay. I think that's doable. It's not asking for you to, overproduce by 250% or something ridiculous. It's 8%. So it's doable.
Right. And I love when that's what I was trying to explain. Just put the numbers to it and see how it could be financially doable, and then how to milestone that out through the months. For me, 4 weeks it's a purpose. So what I heard you say is, you obviously enjoy what you're doing right now. So there's not a big drive to run away from it. And I think the 4-week vacation, as he explains in the book, isn't about taking time off to kind of run away and get out of the day-to-day, but it's about the ability to give yourself space to be a part so that more new ideas and creativity can come in. I like that idea. I definitely would want a purpose with it. Otherwise, if I took 4 weeks off just to take 4 weeks off, chances are, what would I do? I'd binge watch Yellowstone. I think I would end the 4 weeks not feeling good about myself. But what if it was 4 weeks and I'm taking my family to Europe? That would be unbelievable. I would be completely unplugged, and I would be immersed and present in the moment. So the only way that I would do it is if one, my kids could come along for that journey. And now that I have a high schooler, I know that taking time off during school is now not an okay thing. Like you can't do that. So it would have to be during the summer months. So I would have to plan it out. But the idea of having 4 weeks with my family, that would be compelling to me. And that would be very, very worth it.
Yeah. I think I would personally be more thrilled with 2 weeks off multiple times throughout the year or summer than 4 weeks in a row. So listen, I'm sure if Mike were here, he would say, listen, Chad, then there's your thing. Like, who cares? Like, then if that's what you're going to do, because that's how small-minded you are about it, then and if that's amazing to you about it, then go for it. Yeah. And I could, instead of him saying, no, it has to be the same for everyone, and 4 weeks has to be 28 days. If someone said, I can only swing 27 days, I'm sure he'd be like, listen, fine, make it work. But, I'm still a work in progress on trying to figure that out, but I do like Chad, the idea of it.
You know what it is? I just caught up my process. You know what the whole purpose of that 4-week vacation is? If I'm willing to bet you this is what Mike means, especially after reading it. The whole point is to get the to get the business running without you. That is
Correct.
the whole point. So the Clockwork system is about implementing systems that allow your practice to run. So you are not being run by your business.
Correct.
And that gets right back to the top of our conversation about entrepreneurial poverty. If you are in reaction mode, if the business cannot run without you, you are not running a business, you are running yourself. So I believe probably the reason the 4-week one, it's fun. It sounds really exciting. Like it's opulent. So I think that is merely like he says, a test. It's a test run to see if your business can successfully run without you. And if it cannot, then it is not functioning. And you're correct in saying, well, if you're the dentist, how in the heck is that going to happen? And
if you're the solo dentist, this is the trouble. I think if you're a listener and you have an associate or a partner and there are 2 dentists in the office, this should be a lot more achievable. And I've been in both, shoes. So I'm not, if someone said, oh, what do you know? It's like, I know, but like, if you're a solo, I could see the buts. If you're, a dually, you should be able to pull this off, within 18 months. Let's just say that. I think it's easy for me to tell other people that, but hopefully you also, as the listener dentist, understand that I'm just going like, it's a tall order, but like you could make it happen. So there's that.
Well, thank you for doing this deep dive with me into our interview with Mike Michalowicz, author of Profit First, Clockwork, Revised and Expanded, and others.
Et al. Listeners, thanks so much for listening. Hopefully that was good meditation on the stuff that we got into the meat on the last podcast with Mike Michalowicz. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Everyday Practices Podcast. Chad and I are here every week thanks to our community of listeners just like you, and we'd love your help. It would mean the world if you can help spread the word by sharing this episode with a fellow dentist and leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify. Do you have an extraordinary story you'd like to share or feedback on how we can make this podcast even more awesome? Drop us an email at podcast@productivedentist.com. And don't forget to check out our other podcasts from Productive Dentist Academy at productivedentist.com/podcasts. See you next week.